everybody. Welcome to Boston Harbor Distillery. I guess in these times, if you can't come to us, we're going to come to you. My name is Rhonda Kallman, and I am the founder and CEO here at Boston Harbor Distillery. I've just had a decades-old love affair with alcohol, particularly whiskey, which led me to find this beautiful pre-Civil War era building to call home, to make Putnam New England whiskey. So I'm going to talk to you about what we do here, take you through our brands, and look forward to actually hosting you down here at another time. So we're actually on this 18-acre parcel here that is on the southernmost waterfront of Boston. We're actually in the Port Norfolk neighborhood of Neponset, which is a neighborhood of Dorchester, which is a neighborhood of Boston. So hence Boston Harbor Distillery. It's actually this building in this Port Norfolk neighborhood has been the center of entrepreneurial commerce since the mid-1800s. And that was the inspiration for me to call our whiskey Putnam. Just a little history on that. Putnam actually automated the manufacture of the hot-forged horseshoe nail, supplied both sides of the Civil War with horseshoe nails right out of this building. Our label, which you'll see a horse and rider on, is actually Silas Putnam's cousin, or uncle, relative I should say, who was General Israel Putnam. He was the Revolutionary War hero, born at Putnam Pantry in Danvers, Mass., and has spread all over New England. So Putnam is really a strong New England name, and we're very proud to call our whiskey Putnam New England whiskey. The first whiskey we ever made was this. This is our Putnam New England single malt whiskey. And being my background is actually in the craft beer business. I actually helped Jim Cook start what is now the biggest craft brewery in the country. We made Sam Adams, and that was really craft beer back in the mid-'80s was really an ingredient story, and that's exactly what craft distilled spirits are to this day. And so I started this to make malt whiskey, to make great American malt whiskey. Again, I took a page out of what we did at Sam Adams. If you think about beer as the overarching category, and then whiskey is the overarching category, you know, beer is lagers and ales and stouts and sours, etc. Well, whiskey, of course, has different categories as well. Bourbon, by law, has to be made with a majority of corn. And we're actually using whole grains here to make our whiskey. So Putnam single malt is made with 100% two-row malted barley, which is the same stuff we used in craft beer. And just about 20% of that is a chocolate roasted malt. Instead of that peat smoked malt that they use in Scotland, we're actually using chocolate roasted malts. We got the inspiration for the mash bill from our neighbor around the corner in Lower Mills, was the home of the Walter Baker Chocolate Factory, America's oldest chocolatier. So this Putnam New England whiskey was the first whiskey that we made here. It's made grain to glass. We just, I don't even know what month this is, end of last year, we bottled our 4-year-old bottled and bond, and it's bottled at 100 proof. So when you taste it, you're gonna taste some rich, some velvety, smooth, delicious chocolate notes, coffee notes, toffee. All of our whiskey is put in new white American oak 53-gallon barrels. We actually get our barrels from 4 different sources in Minnesota, Missouri, and South Carolina. But we make sure that they are seasoned first and toasted for at least 18 months, and then we do a heavy char, alligator char number 4. So we're getting some really nice rich colors and flavors from the wood early on. Rye actually was America's first whiskey. Ironically, it was about 50 years before bourbon, and it was made by George Washington. But I love rye, always have, which is really the way I fell in love with whiskey was a little bit of my father's rye and ginger way back when. So this rye is actually 95% rye and 5% two-row malted barley. We lay it down on site in our own barrels and blend and bottle right here on site. It is really soft. It's really, our signature is just really smooth. We cut our hearts very narrow on all of the distilled spirits that we make, but we end up with this really beautiful signature smoothness. So this is our Putnam lineup. We will also make available in limited quantities our red wine finished. It's also cask strength, so we can pick the proof. This one happens to be 90. The red wine barrels right now are coming from our neighbor here at Boston Winery. They're also our landlord. So we get a good deal on red wine barrels. So this one happens to be finished in Cab Franc barrels. It's very delicious. We also have cask strength rye, so whatever the proof is there. And then finally, we source 12-year-old Tennessee bourbon and 12-year-old. And we sell it here out of the distillery only for the time being. But that's our lineup. We'll continue to add some interesting expressions, but for now, this is our flagship, and this is the pride and joy. So when the car came in and there was no need for horseshoe meals anymore, Putnam went out of business. And the next notable entrepreneur to have commerce in this building was actually the George Lollies shipyard. And Lollies, if anybody's a sailor, will probably know Lollies. They're famous for building America's Cup winning yachts. But in this building, they were actually commissioned to make minesweepers for World War II. So both Putnam and Lollies had government contracts and were very successful here. So that was the inspiration for our rum. As you know, rum is America's spirit, and that all started right here on Boston Harbor. Some of our dark days of the triangle trade, molasses, slaves, and ammunition. You all have heard of the molasses flood in the North End. So pre-prohibition, there are actually more rum distilleries in New England than there were breweries. So if that's any indication of where this craft distilling movement is going, I think it's here to stay. So again, the inspiration was from Lollies ships that grace our labels. This one, it happens to be the Puritan. But we made our rum, actually, we call it New England style. And New England style is using 100% molasses and actually Quabbin Reservoir water from the Berkshires, which happens to be Boston City water supply, so we've got that going for us. So the ingredients in this is purely 100% molasses and Quabbin Reservoir water. And it really makes the rum this really earthy, flavorful, almost like a Brazilian cachaça. It's just really interesting because, as you know, by law, rum needs to be made from sugar cane. And there's white sugar rums like a Bacardi, and a lot of the Caribbean rums are Demerara, sugar, brown sugar. French West Indies does like a rum agricole, which is from sugarcane juice. And the butt end of that production is molasses. And I've been to a lot of distilleries, many of them down in the Caribbean actually just throw the molasses away. But here in New England, we actually love our molasses. And again, it gives it a beautiful, earthy sweetness. We have a white rum and a dark rum. And the dark rum is actually not an aged rum. It happens to be a dark rum. So think of it as a vatted rum. So instead of putting the white rum into a barrel, which we wanted to really reserve for our whiskey making, we actually hang staves and wood into rum like a vatted rum. And it takes us about 8 weeks to get this beautiful color. But when you taste it, you'll taste some vanillas and caramels, and some oak and some bake shop spices that are just really, really lovely. Our signature cocktail with that happens to be a nor'easter, which is our version of a dark and stormy, with great ginger beer, a little lime, some bitters, and yourself a great cocktail. And I'm very pleased to introduce to you today our Lollies Harborside Gin. This is our new addition for spring and summer, and I think you're going to like it as much as we do around here. We take a wheat-based grain spirit and we distill it with orange peel, tangerine peel, lemon peel, orris root, angelica root, and of course juniper. And we bottle it at 90 proof. And it's just really a wonderful spring summer sipper on ice with a twist. It's all you need, maybe a little splash of cran, a little soda or tonic, however you drink it. This is our Spirit of Boston station inside the distillery. And you're probably thinking, what's Spirit of Boston? Well, talk about coming full circle. We actually distill finished Sam Adams beer varieties into these delicious spirits that drink like a whiskey. However, our friends at the TTB won't let us call it whiskey. The catch-all term for anything that doesn't meet the standard class or identity laid out by the federal government is actually called spirit. So that's where we got the name. It's truly what we've trademarked, the evolution of beer. So we wait for Sam Adams to actually make their different varieties of beer. The Merrymaker Gingerbread Stout. And this is like Christmas in a bottle. They're using different kinds of malts, of course, hops, which are the nearest botanical relative to marijuana. They give beer their bitterness, their spice, their aroma, but whiskey doesn't have hops. And they also are using ginger, clove, nutmeg, and cinnamon. So we wait for them to finish their beer, and right before it's put in a bottle or a keg, the freshest beer you can get, we actually bring a tanker load here, half a tanker load, about 3,000 gallons, and we run it right to the still. So like everything we distill here, we distill it twice. We make our cuts, very narrow hearts, so that you get that best part of the spirit, and then we lay it down in used barrels because we don't want too much wood to really overwhelm the nuances of the beer. So, and then we age it. Everything that we're selling now is at least 3.5 years old, but we've been making this for a while. And it's actually a beer for whiskey lovers and a whiskey for beer lovers. And we have all these different varieties. At any given time, we have 3. So currently, we have the double black lager, which drinks like a malt whiskey. It's a really malty, heavy beer with chocolate and toffee notes. And we also have the Ella Blanc, was from their India Pale Lager. And in it, they used hops from Australia that gives it this beautiful, bright, tropical flavor. It almost has a gin-esque about it. So we bottle everything right now in 375s, except for this Spirit of Boston is actually made from Ella Blanc, and this was handpicked by the folks from Encore. So Encore bought a barrel of this, hence the purple, lucky in Chinese. This fall, we will be offering Merrymaker in 750 bottles as well. So we'll get some key accounts with that off-premise and some on-premise. But so we take 3,000 gallons, and after the distillation process, which really amplifies the notes, the spicy notes, concentrates the hop notes, really remarkable. We bottle it at 84 proof, which was the year we started Sam Adams. On the side, it talks about a little true Bostonian handshake. We've actually distilled some Trillium, but we'll probably in very, very small quantities. This is limited edition stuff. So the last notable entrepreneur to have commerce here was the Seymour's Ice Cream Factory. And that was the inspiration for our confectionery line, which happens to be our Boston Harbor Maple. This is really a beautiful expression of rich decadence of cream, and it's a rum base and with maple syrup, which makes it really different for this area. And it's just like Bailey's in terms of how you serve it in coffee, hot or iced, over brownies, just over the rocks, espresso martinis, etc. We love to pair it with this. This is I call this New England Bounty in a bottle. And this is our local roasted coffee liqueur. It's our rye whiskey base with Great Barrington 413 cold brew, which is out in Great Barrington, Autocrat coffee syrup from Rhode Island, and our signature sweetener for the distillery is Ackerman Farms maple syrup from a small family farm in Cabot, Vermont. So together they're amazing. We have a signature drink that we serve at the distillery called the Harbor Slide instead of a mudslide. Just these two together over ice, 50-50 or however you prefer it, and it's killer, easy to make at home as well. We're gonna have some fun with this, guys. It's called Demon Seed. And this is a scorpion pepper. We use whole scorpion peppers, infused rye whiskey with real maple syrup from Ackerman Farms, and fresh ginger. And this is an amazing cocktail variant or shooter, however you want to use it. Again, we have a cocktail here that is very popular. We've been serving this only in-house at Boston Harbor Distillery for the last few months. And we have a cocktail called the Double Dog Dare, and it is great. It's Putnam rye, demon seeds, some fiery ginger syrup, and a little maple syrup. Shake it up over ice and put it in a coupe, and people are loving it.